nào em đến chơi mà quên mang tiếng cười, lặng yên không nói. 20 tuổi đầu qua mất rồi, khi nhìn sâu trong đời mà mưa rơi, nhà son nét môi. Khi hỏi duyên cớ sao để hoa kia úa màu, nhìn nhau giây phút em tôi bảo rằng thôi quá buồn, ta gầm nhau ký áo cưới bay xong còn gì thôi em nhé xin trả về niềm cô đơn chứ cho anh bữa xuôi mùa xuôi ai đúng vòng tay cho buông dù gặp nhau vui mặt bữa mà thôi. Em về trong bóng lửa thương chưa tắt nên em để lại hương tóc dài cho người yêu năm chưa vui trở về
Turn the radio off, please. Yep. That's a great song.
The area here where your ship is berthed is indeed the place of the first successful European settlement in Tasmania. It was founded in 1804. 1804, but before that, 40,000 years of indigenous population. So we are really, really latecomers. The area over to the side of us here on the right is in the process of being transformed from a traditional goods handling waterfront area to what we hope is going to be an absolutely superb integrated development of residential, commercial, recreational, as so many places around the world have now come to see as well. The goods handling has gone well out into the northern suburbs, get the big trucks out of the city, and it sits on the railway line. There is a railway line that feeds into this area. We're hoping that that's going to be converted to light passenger rail, and hoping that it's going to be absolutely beautiful, a valuable and extensive site. So if you're a designer or an architect and you just look at it and say, my gosh, I have a vision, please let us know about it, because I think maybe the people in the power areas don't quite know where they're going at the moment. But that's the way it is. Over on the left-hand corner, you'll see some terracotta bricks on the bottom and a round building on the top, which we often call the biscuit barrel. That's the home of the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, a very, very fine orchestra, and you can pick them up on the internet. Have a little listen. Vladimir Ashkenazi was indeed the artistic director of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra for a wee while, and came down here and stood on the podium and led the Tasmanian Symphony for a few concerts and went away full of praise. While we are a relatively new settlement, we have some buildings that we are trying very hard to keep as part of the built heritage. On the right-hand side here, Hobart Gas Company is the old gas works. There was a great big gasometer tucked away behind it, made gas from coke and coal. And in front of us, the most unprepossessing facade that you might ever see. They were big wall stores, and now an award-winning hotel. I was lucky enough to work for our beautiful old theatre here in Hobart for several years, and the owner of this hotel was a very, very generous man when it came to sponsoring the arts, and I would be forever grateful to him. He put up lots and lots of theatre companies and did post-opening night suppers and various things, and with all of that was running a very busy and enterprising hotel as well. We're going to have a really busy day today. Off to Port Arthur. There'll be a walking tour with the Port Arthur guide, who's got far more knowledge about the site itself than I ever will have. The option of your going on to a little cruise, if you wish, around the harbour, or you might wish to say, no, don't want to do that, I want to have a better look at some of the buildings. And after that, at the end of the morning, we'll spirit you away to have a very nice lunch at a Tudor-style hotel at the Fox and Hounds. We will then motor back and call into an historic township just to the north of Hobart on our way home. So there's going to be plenty to see and do the day today. Another example of some of those, one of those buildings rather, that we're trying to retain is over there with the beautiful old engineers building on our right. And to show you one of the reasons for transforming the waterfront, sitting behind it very recently, within the last couple of weeks, demolished, was a concrete works. So not quite a good day for that beautiful old building. On the left-hand side, the Tasmanian headquarters of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and in its backyard, in its back garden, the Baha'i Temple. Of course, good friendly neighbours. And this is Hobart peak hour. So if you come from a really big city, you'll be just laughing, I'm sure. You'll see an avenue of pines up on the right. On the crest there, that avenue of pines leads down to our cenotaph, our place of remembrance for those who have given their lives in past wars. All too many past wars, unfortunately. Because of our devotion and dedication as it was to England, many, many, many of our young men and women left Tasmania to go and serve, most particularly in the First World War, and it was really damaging to the youthful population of this island. It took quite a bit of recovery. On the left, going uphill, there is an avenue of Gallipoli pines. Gallipoli, which was a military disaster on the 25th of April 1915. Australians were killed in their thousands as they landed on the shores of Gallipoli, the Turks above not having to make very much effort to mow them down as they arrived. The River Derwent is the absolute fabulous waterway that you came up on this morning, and which goes up through the state a couple of 100 kilometres inland. It has on its distance 7 dams and 9 hydroelectric power stations. And if we didn't have an absolutely shocking El Nino as we have at the moment, those power stations would be pumping out electricity in no uncertain fashion. They are pumping out electricity, but the water level's getting lower and lower and lower at the moment. So if you want to do your rain dance, bear in mind how widely the heavens open. Tucked up here on the left-hand side is our government house. Every state in Australia has a governor, the Queen's representative. And in Canberra, our national capital, we have a Governor General. We operate on the Westminster system of government, having an upper and a lower house, each of which is popularly elected. And yay, we have our first woman governor. She's been in office for about 18 months now, and she is a powerhouse. Internationally recognised for her expertise in human rights and international law, Professor Kate Warner. My gosh, she's a girl. Now, about 40 years ago, a freighter was coming up the river to go under the bridge, to go up to pick up or deliver, I'm not quite sure, some goods a little bit further up the river. The captain had had a bit of a jolly time along the way, and he was tucked into bed down in his cabin. First mate was at the helm, and the currents that come under this bridge can be quite significant, and he misjudged steering the ship, and it ran into a pylon right under where we are now travelling. It knocked out one entire span of the bridge and completely disabled the transportation of people from the eastern shore to the western shore for 2 whole years while it was rebuilt. Can you imagine? Total dislocation. But out of bad things, good things come. To the fore came a couple of ferry operators, one of them being a bloke called Bob Clifford, going to and fro. That of course gave him a reasonable bank balance. That reasonable bank balance led him to building catamarans that zoff around the river. Catamarans that you see when you go to Sydney. You'll see lots and lots of catamarans getting around Sydney Harbour. That's the sort of catamarans he was building. They got bigger and bigger and bigger. He found markets for these big vessels overseas in many, many countries. Down the coasts in Scandinavian countries. There's one that just went off last year to Montevideo, named Francisco, as it happens, after a fellow who's now living in Rome. They're all around the world. They carry 200 vehicles and 1,000 passengers. They are big vessels. They're lightweight because they're made of welded aluminium, and they're powered by natural gas, so they're very energy efficient and they're darn fast. There was one just returned recently at the end of its lease to the American Navy. It's been completely refurbished. So there you go. Out of it also came the burgeoning of services here on the eastern shore, where there had not been much to keep things going. People had relied on going across the bridge and across the city to get their government services. Medical island in the world. The largest island is Australia, and it's of course to our direct north. The 26th largest island in the world, and we have 334 other islands around us which we look after. Some of them are just little tiny dots. Some of them, a couple of them, are large enough to hold and sustain a couple of hundred people in permanent residency, and lots of holiday visitors. And some of those islands produce some of the most amazing goods as well. Up to the northwest we have King Island, which now has an international class golf course, by the by. People are coming from near and far to play golf on King Island, and they also produce some of the most magnificent beef you're ever likely to have, served at table by provenance. Their dairy products also are world class, having taken off awards in New York food fairs, etc., and sold with great haste around the country. The Republic of Ireland, Scotland, or, as I've heard lots of North American accents, you might like to perhaps compare it to West Virginia. So we're not all that large. One of our protectorates is Macquarie Island. Macquarie Island is sort of halfway between us and Antarctica. It's 1,000 kilometres down south. Antarctica, 2,000 kilometres down south. We do not have a lot of tourist travel out of Hobart. That is done more commonly out of South America, albeit we are having an extension to Hobart Airport, which we're just about to pass on the right in a minute or two, and that's now becoming a more popular and expeditious way of getting services and products and goods down to the folks who are working in Antarctica, and we're hoping perhaps it might also open up some tourist lines as well. You might be interested. Midday temperature is 52 degrees or 12 degrees Celsius. So you can see it's not a huge range, it's a very, very benign climate. And of course, being a dryish, we don't have that terrible humidity that you're going to find, well, particularly now in Sydney, which I think has become subtropical over recent years, and even more so as you go north in the big island of Australia. So, when you come back to see us again and have a really good proper look at Tasmania, and heading up to this peninsula, which is called Midway Point, I doubt that there would be a house on Midway Point that doesn't have an expansive water view. That waterway, if you go up around that headland over there to our right, will take you back around to Hobart. And it was a very fine way to ship goods and products back in the early days before road. The causeway that we're riding on now, and indeed the previous one, were convict built. No bulldozers, no backhoes, no big mechanical, a more direct route to get through to Port Arthur. Before these were built, the road had to go way over to our left and skirt over the hills and around the waterway and join up very soon at the intersection of the little suburb we're about to come to. We're actually going to visit a town through which that major road went many years ago on our way back to the vessel this afternoon. It's a town called Richmond. A very historic town indeed. And the little town we're coming up to now is called Sorell, officially established in 1821, because that was the time that the governor from New South Wales came to actually visit, but it had been a thriving community well before then, producing lots and lots and lots of food. A funny looking thing, so pictures of it, drawings of it. It was sitting up on something like a cone, and then the mill on the top was a box, called a box mill, and as the wind direction shifted, so the box rotated for the blades of the mill to catch the wind. It's quite, I've never seen one like that before, and it was really quite interesting. But you could imagine, it was really easy to get the goods around to Hobart Port on the water, and then of course they went on the water back up to Sydney. That's when the first fleet arrived. Many convicts, fewer free settlers. Why did we get convicts to Australia? Why did they send them here? Well, it was because of the American War of Independence. After the War of Independence, folks in America said, well, thank you very much. We don't need your baddies, we can make enough of our own. So magnificent and accurately drawn. Wind and sent, I think it was around about 11 boats in the first fleet, out to Sydney, where they indeed slowly managed to make a settlement. Could you imagine being sent to the other end of the world with seasons upside down, with soil that was totally different to what you'd known, with animals that you had never seen in your entire life before. And, of course, with a native population here that had been living in the Australian mainland and here in Tasmania for tens of thousands of years. The Sydney settlement started to clock along, and early in 1803 some French people came through, and they were indeed having a meal with the governor there, and they raved about this place to the south. They raved about the soil, the climate, because they'd been here for a wee while. They established a garden down the channel, down past where your ship is berthed, and they found it very successful. And they found the natives here were pretty friendly, and they found that the animals weren't bad to kill and put on the table either. They thought they'd go back to France and they'd get permission to come back and put a French flag in the soil and claim this land for France. Who knows? I could have been saying bonjour to you today instead of hello. We could have been perhaps an outpost of New Caledonia, or vice versa. It's really quite lovely to contemplate, actually. But Captain, or should I say Governor Phillip in Sydney thought, we're getting quite a few rather difficult prisoners here, and life is getting a little bit hard to manage those. The natives are starting to object in some areas. I think I might send off for permission for us to put a British flag in the soil. This little party of 26 people arrived, mixed convicts. I think there was only 1 or 2 free settlers, and a couple of soldiers arrived, and they decided to settle a little bit further up the river than where your ship is. Hunting area. The settle more of this and some more of that, and we'll go back and take it down, because they were all too weak, they were all too baffled to know what to do. And thankfully, the governor in New South Wales sent down a very smart man, Captain Collins, who came down with a bigger shipment of people where your ship is berthed. And that began the long, hard slog for a successful settlement in Hobart. We're still developing here, and to our right now is an area, and to the left as well I might say, an area that has recently had an irrigation scheme put through in the blink of an eye. In 12 months you'll come across some more quite intensive agriculture. So we're developing all the time here, finding our way through what is, those of at the moment anyway, by piping water through from the upper reaches of the Derwent River and growing food. Even though he's got a contract with Forestry Tasmania, I think it's becoming quite difficult. And he does quality timber, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah, he's just not. He does run of the mill stuff, but he also does quality mouldings and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Oh, yeah.
school day. Big community hall was built and many community functions were organised to get people together so they could talk about the panic and the fear and the terror of what came through here on that day. 65 structures in this little town gone. And in centigrade terms, they reckon the ground temperature was around about 56 degrees. That's a man-made canal down to our left, which was cut drilling later this morning, because they'll be going out on an adventure cruise, and that will hug the coast. And it will enable them to see bird colonies, seal colonies, all sorts of goodies right in close to the coast, and it will take off from Port Arthur. This is a swing bridge that allows masted vessels to go through. It's quite amusing actually, because there is a bridge keeper paid by the government, but the boat people are so grateful for him coming down to open the swing bridge that quite often there's a shopping bag on the end of a boat hook, and in the shopping bag a couple of cans of beer to say thank you very much. Fire came through here, and on the left we have a property called Bangor. Bangor has been occupied by the Dunbabin family for many, so never again will they have to slaughter animals who have been damaged by the fire and go through the heartbreak of that. The waterway out to the right, you can see, is expansive. Fabulous recreational fishing. We've had many a meal at our house from the fish court out here. And if you are a keen fisherman and you like to go deep sea fishing down here off the peninsula, lots of charters to take you out. Quite a bit of tuna. I've got a bit of tuna in my freezer at the moment. My son-in-law lake, well seeded by our inland fisheries, and lots of trout. And if you're city of Hobart, breaking a lot of the southwesterly weather, so you can see in a straight line how efficient water transport from here to there would be. It's home to a lot of people who are retired, home to quite a few people who live and work down here or commute into Hobart, because it's less than an hour's drive. And my golly, on the weekends and at holiday times, it's a population explosion. And there are some beautiful little houses down here, and some beautiful large ones too. The Tasmanian term for a holiday house is a shack. Back in, and away you go. Not a bad sort of a life.
Very far, but you can get an overview of the site.
một lần tiến đưa
quite a lot of them.
bao nhiêu
I'll
là
point out a couple of
buồn.
things first to keep in mind. Hobart is about
Đường ngập lá rơi khi sương chiều lắng xuống. Tôi vẫn đi giữa cô đơn, gió lạnh buốt tâm hồn, cho niềm thương nhớ vẫn vương.
Now, as I was saying, Jeremy Benson was very influential back in the 1800s about prison reform. And he had what he called a machine. His ideal system for running a prison was a place that grinds rogues into honest men. And I mentioned the 4 elements of that machine. So what about the raw material that was fed into that machine? What was the typical convict like? Well, a male convict typically was a young man who was convicted of stealing clothes, stealing livestock, and generally not a first offence. Of course there were violent or vicious criminals amongst them, but just like today, the minority. And most of them were here, not just timber, but things as diverse as clothes, furniture, ships, bricks and timber. It's boys, were so this is an important performance to separate boys from the bad influence. Next door, or just to the left of that point, is a little island. That's the Isle of the Dead. That is the cemetery for Hobart. And there's more than 1,000 people. And beyond that, well, that's wilderness. In fact, if you know anything about Tasmania, there's a lot of wilderness here. So this is any war. When you drove down this morning on the coast, you would have crossed a narrow strip of land called the entry to the Tasman Peninsula where we are. The prison, the settlement. Next door is the military district. The military officer was responsible for security on site and for the discipline of the troops. And right around at the other end, if you can look across where we walked across the avenue, you'll see a couple of stone pillars. That's the start of an avenue that leads up to the church, which we can't see from here, but we'll see later. So at one end, if you like, we've got the church, the symbol of God's authority, and at the other end, the Commandant's house, the symbol of the government's authority. If you were a convict arriving here back in the 1800s, the ship would have stopped on this side of the harbour, and you were marched up and lined up outside the law courts. That's that ruin up on the road there. The law courts, and the clerk would come out and read all the rules that applied to convicts down here at Port Arthur. Some prisoners complained that it took more than an hour to read all the rules. I hope I won't have that complaint about you, from you. Now, so back to the military district. For many years, the security on site was the responsibility of army regiments. In the later years, that was gradually taken over by civilian guards, many of whom were former convicts. But coming back to the soldiers, you can see a watchtower there. There was a second one further up the hill, and the watchtower was for the guards who were on duty monitoring the site, also a store for guns and ammunition. When the convicts first arrived here, they were housed in huts. Many of the early buildings were weatherboard, and unfortunately, most of them are no longer with us. They were either burnt down in one bushfire or another, or once the prison closed, lots of people raided this site for building materials. So we don't have those original convict barracks. But we know that the fact that they were simple dormitories, that the ideas of classifying prisoners and prison closed in May the 77. The second moved in, the government told them what to do, and this became the township. They changed the name because they wanted to try and hide the convict stain, as how it was described. And so this yard we're in here is one of the convicts. But from here we get a better view of Civil Row. There's some of the houses up there. For example, the one with the little buggy out the front is the junior medical officer's house. Then there's the Catholic chaplain's house, and the visiting magistrate's or senior surgeon's house. And the one over on the corner there is the accountant's house. And further over to the left, these are trees where the large that was the Hawkers depot. The Hawkers, by the later stage of the prison operation, there were quite a number of heritage convicts that came to join at their facilities in Australia. Next door was another innovation, that is the
kiểu này là mấy người bị đại ra đấy.
You're on a boat. 1 sip is like 2.
Do whatever he wants.
You pick Marie out of the mud.
cold. He was bitterly cold. That west wind going, I remember that. It's beautiful golf courses there. You could see them. You could see them.
Ngựa đi ngoài xa hí vang trời, chiêng trống vua trăm hồi, ngần ngại trên núi đồi, rồi vọng ra khắp nơi. Phía cách quan xa vời, chiêng trống vua trăm hồi, ngần ngại trên núi đồi, rồi dậy vang khắp nơi.
Vậy là
ai quên ghi vào gan đã bao nguyện thề, nhìn chân trời xanh người mong chờ vẫn nhớ nơi xa. Bao nhiêu năm bông con đứng đợi trông về, bao nhiêu phen thời gian xóa phai lời thề, người tung hoành bên cõi xa xăm, người mong chồng con lớn.
Honestly, he said, I cannot understand. Why don't you lease it? Why don't you lease it out?
Well, because my dad, they always try and take advantage of it.
I said, well, you know, rent is rent. You make a sensible rental deal.
Here on the left, by the by, just recently changed hands for, I think it was pretty close to a lazy $2 million. It is magnificent. The wife of Prince Charles, when they came out about 18 months ago, invited the ladies of the town and the surrounds to come to lunch. And I've just lived over the hill, and I think my invitation must still be in the mail. Behind us is the Richmond Bridge, 1823, convict built, and an absolute boon to photographers.
Yep, there's no entry now.
And indeed, St John's takes the same name as the church. A beautiful little school. We're going to do a bit of off-roading here. These riverside houses to our left, I think very English in appearance, delightful, but I tell you what, there is the odd occasion when they get wet feet, when we have a bumper rainfall. Yes. Well, you're a lucky man, Neil, to be able to manoeuvre up here. I'll walk anyone back to the bridge who wants to take a photograph when we get vegetables and how to cook a decent meal. So this is something that's come through in about the last 5 to 10 years. We have a beautiful cook. Stephanie Alexander is her name, and she's a bit of a TV celebrity and runs cooking schools in Tuscany, takes groups of people from Australia over to Tuscany, etc. She was the instigator of that program. Best of luck to her. It's fantastic. Better view of the bridge on our right. If you were to Google Tasmania and did a subtext of tourist attractions, I can bet you $10 you're going to get an image of that bridge. It's a beautiful house, has croquet lawns out the back, etc. It's just gorgeous. And we're now going over the oldest continuous operating bridge in Australia, also convict built in 1823. Not all the convicts were ill-educated, quite a few of them were engineers, architects, designers, and of course it was designed by a convict and built by convicts. Typical of that one right across the road from us. And if you come back to spend a little more time in Turkey, you'll get spoilt rotten by the host and hostess with homemade jams and beautiful farm fresh eggs, etc. And your accommodation all dressed out in colonial furniture. So down to the left we go.
Right here.
Oh, yes.
And we're going down now to the area of a Richmond jail, which used to hold prisoners who were put out on release to work their little socks off in people's properties, maybe in transit to Port Arthur. There is the bakery to the right if you just want to sit down and have a coffee, whatever suits your fancy. There's the jail to the left if you want to go in there and maybe take some atmospheric. Now we have, thankfully,
All other convict sites are ruined, although in part remaining. This jail is still in its original condition and in entirety. Condition has been preserved and not restored, and is therefore an important part of Tasmania's colonial and convict past. Richmond Jail is not to be missed, so come on in. Get your free brochure guide and experience Van Diemen's Land's earliest days in this unique and fascinating building.
Nơi phía nam đường rừng gập ghềnh, dấu binh lửa chiếu hào quang đục ngầu thúc trong lời gào, dẫn đoàn quân trăm chiến mấy ngàn viên tới ngoài biên thoát vòng ngục tù, còi nước non cu tiên về Nam, miệt mài vẫn từ xưa hăng hai sông lòng vai giữa cờ bay ngất trời mây, núi đá kinh hoàng nhà cầu sông thề, hỡi người chinh phu anh hùng non sông, chào người con quý cho người trong non, thiếp xin lỗi thề. Chàng dạo bước ngoài sườn non, tìm người đứng cô đơn, đang ngóng đợi chồng về. Vượt hoành sơn vòng thành vui, mong ở nơi cô thôn.
Don't repeat that. Did you hear that?
Thấy mưa còn xanh ngắt còn trong chiếc gươm thân phụ thuyền, nàng để con trao lại rồi chị vào sơn hà biển bao sông thần, người xưa đâu còn hình đã bơ vơ đứng đợi chồng đã không mưa lòng son luyện chi cho cơn hư thần, đã suy tan tành đời đã nên mưa gió đổ quạnh sông ai mới chiếc bao gươm chinh khách đã chào
And I'm mightily pleased to see that quite a few of you have managed to discover Tasmanian ice cream, which is I make ice cream. It's not something that we have very often because we don't have dessert very often, but when we do, by golly, it's lovely. And Easter time is the time when we go and pick wild blackberries as well. So I've just made a nice little spot in the freezer. A few packs of beautiful blackberries, and they will get served to some very willing guests with homemade ice cream.
Gần tới rồi. Đi xe bus.
The one and only pub that's left in town after I think there was something like about a dozen pubs along this road, and they weren't just watering holes, albeit English people particularly were not used to drinking water as such. They used to drink an ale or some such to make sure there were no little nasties in it. So lots of people were used to quenching their thirst. Is one that's owned by the National Trust. Now the National Trust has bought properties pretty well all around the country to make sure that they are preserved and conserved, what's more, to make sure that some of those early dwellings have some time to live into the future, and lots of bed and breakfast accommodation as well.
Up to the satellite beach.
Oh really?
Yeah, from up north. And come down, spend time in Richmond and then go to the
radio television. Down to the left is the waterway that joined up with the area that we crossed to a telescope, which is owned by the University of Tasmania, and around it they have some fields in which they grow experiment crops as well. I think they're establishing another radio telescope a little further up into the middle of the island because they reckon that the noise and interference down here is starting to get a little bit too heavy. Oh my gosh, we are so heavy. That's Daniel's place up on the right.
Oh, up there.
Here, up here
Yeah,
now.
up here. Oh,
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there's all the signs.
Yeah, pick your own fruit.
Yeah, he comes in when he comes out and helps them picking everything.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's quite active.
Yeah.
So scenic, it was just beautiful. Yeah. The island. There are walks everywhere in Tasmania with very well developed and well defined maps. If you want to explore that at all, just go into the internet, do Tasmanian Government Parks and Wildlife Walks, and you will have a world of wonder opened up before you. It's just been discovered, you know, that this land sitting there idle is so close to Hobart CBD, and it's pretty good for housing actually, so we're getting more and more and more houses in minutes of the CBD. Central business. Once again, this was the old bullock track. And a very popular watering hole on our right was then, is now. Fantastic meals. There's a big one on the... You go for a tour around Tasmania, eating in the hotel. The ship in a trice. Coast average 100 inches a year.
We certainly do. And down near Port Arthur, actually, there are some fabulous beaches. They run some surfing championships down there. Yep. Yep. Yes, that's a lovely beach along the peninsula, along the neck. What's Karen's last name? Fraser. Off the bridge. I just thought I'd let you know and not to get concerned. You haven't been in Hobart for much in the city? The traffic has been you do? A bit of a bingle? Okay, well timed it is too. Okay, see you soon. Bye. She thinks there's been an accident upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Not that it's an unusual sight, but there's an ambulance down there with its lights.
Just picked him up.
Its lights flashing.
To make sure that we're not being counted as missing in action.
Tuổi đôi chân đất tôi có ngọn đai lửa đèn đêm bóng mờ nhạt nhòa hồn lắng thầm đi vào dĩ vãng đường tình không chung lối mang mối tiếc cho nhau ngày nào tay trong tay lối về cùng hẹn hò dìu em giấc mộng vừa trưa tình thầm môi nồng đêm dài lưu luyến nghẹn ngào trong thương tiếc vì mai bước theo chồng em sang ngang rồi chôn kỷ niệm vào thương nhớ hôn lên tóc mềm lê sầu thắm đôi mi xin em một lời chúc nguyện tình yêu cuối thương yêu không tròn thôi giá thử đi em ơi người về lên xe hoa kỷ niệm buồn bã